Appreciate everybody for joining me back here on, of course, what I like to call the best, the most entertaining, the most informational, and the most educational basketball content on the planet in the form of a podcast. Remember to follow along anywhere that you find your favorite podcast. Make sure you subscribe. That's the name of, that's the word of the day, the word of the week, word of the month, word of the year, 2021. So appreciate everybody that subscribed already and those who will do so later on. Appreciate you in advance. Remember to follow along on all social media platforms at Tate's Take Hoops, TATESTAKEHOOPS, where basketball lives. And without further ado, as you can see in the header that we're going to be obviously talking about Michigan State. This is our victory for MSU segment. They've been on a roll, 3-game winning streak, Indiana, and then on the road, and then back-to-back games against number 5 ranked Illinois and the number 4 ranked Ohio State. So it's that time again, starting to kind of get things warmed up. Yes, we're getting closer to March if Michigan State's playing well. That's typically the way that this thing's always seem to go. I want to get my guy in here to kind of talk a little bit about it. He's been covering Michigan State athletics for quite some time, originally from Detroit, and was also at the game on last night, and is consistently and persistently at these games and in those press conferences, and he can shed a little bit more light on some of the things that he's hearing from some of the key and star players in those games, in addition to some of the different quotes that Tom Izzo has shared with us all this week. So appreciate him for coming in, and let's get ready to bring him on, man, because he's been somebody who has been in these locker rooms prior to, obviously the pandemic. And so appreciate him for coming through, man. That would be none other than my dude, man, Lindsay Huddleston. Remember, you can find him on all social media platforms. First one on Twitter at HSolutions1 and on IG at SPS Edge. That is Lindsay Huddleston, founder of Sports Psychology Solutions. What's up, Linz?
Hey, brother, how you doing?
Man, I'm outstanding. I appreciate you for joining me, dude, and had an outstanding time catching up with you on last night at the Michigan State game and just kind of getting a little bit of fellowship in and whatnot. Let's talk about Michigan State, obviously, man. Again, 3-game winning streak. What are some of the things that I think what everybody wants to know is what's caused this team to kind of turn the corner, I guess? What are some of the things that you've seen them consistently do over the course of the last 3 games?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. In all honesty, your show is amazing. You can tone on the show and see anybody at any given time. So no matter what my profile has been, my profile has increased now because I made it on the Tate's Take, no doubt, But no, man, you're doing a great job. You know that. We talk all the time. But let's talk about Michigan State. It had been hard to watch Michigan State basketball for a while, Deshaun, as you know. I always tell people who call and ask, Lindsay, what's going on? What's going on? And I'm not making excuses for Tom Izzo. He's a Hall of Fame coach. You don't need that. But it's been a perfect storm. He went down with COVID at the beginning of the season. His team goes down with COVID. And he'll be the first one to tell you it's not an excuse because other teams have. But he talks about missing that summer to get his players to come together in jail. He lost 2 NBA players. We take that for granted. He was a Big Ten champion last season, but you lose Cassius Winston, Xavier Tillman to the NBA. That's a huge void. And I think Michigan State fans in particular just get this idea that, we're supposed to win no matter what. No, it doesn't work like that. Then you get Josh Langford back. Not after 2 games off. We're talking about 2 years, man. 2 years of being out of play, out of sync, and finally getting things back together. He lose some people in between, a Gabe Brown here or there. So it's been tough. But he also had to change his approach, Deshaun, because known for being a fire and brimstone coach, probably the last of the Mohicans when it comes to that, right? And we talk about that all the time. But he will be the first one to tell you that, hey, I couldn't go at my guys like that because I know they just were not ready for it. As fans, we can always just say, give me more. But Tom Izzo is also not only a philosopher, but, a doctor, and he's trying to heal his patients. But I think these last 3 games we've seen, Deshaun, have been typical of what Michigan State can do. And if that's consistent, you want to say, hey, it all worked at the right time. I know you and I talked about it last night. Is the ticket punch. You said it might be in that sleeve. They may be kind of getting it ready before they hand it over. I think they got the clicker in hand, but I think at the end of the day, last night game in particular is going to give that committee reason to say, hey, Michigan State is good for basketball. It's good for the bottom line. And I think all things being considered, if they split this game coming up between Michigan and get another win, they'll probably get in the tournament.
Yeah, I think likely that's the case of what it's going to be myself. And I know people have called me crazy. I said they're going to find a way to split that game with, and this is prior to, I want to make sure I remind the people, this is prior to the Illinois game. And I just feel like this is just, we've seen crazier things happen in March. And I know Michigan looks damn near invincible and maybe not getting the respect they deserve, or maybe not being put in the conversation with the unbeaten teams, that being Baylor and Gonzaga. But rivalry games, you get it in back-to-back opportunities, and that's just one of those things that's just always kind of hard to gauge. And it is Michigan State back-to-back conference champions after all. And I understand that they lost to pieces and all that good stuff. Looked like a totally different team. And that was another piece that I kind of wanted to throw out there, because a lot of people say, well, why has this year, not necessarily with Michigan State, but just in general, a lot of the Blue Bloods look the way they do? And I feel like personally, a lot of those blue blood programs, specifically Duke and a lot of times Kansas, sometimes even North Carolina, definitely with Kentucky as well, they rely so heavily on those one and done players, a lot of those freshmen. But when you have a year like this year in COVID, where you don't have the opportunity to practice as much, or not only do you have the concerns about COVID sometimes with a lot of your own teams, but even the opposing teams a lot of times, and so you can't practice, let alone play games sometimes. But Michigan State, I guess, is kind of like an outlier in a sense, because they're not really relying really heavily on some of those, one and dones or freshmen and so forth. I guess you could probably say that they are because of AJ Hoggard. They don't really have a point guard. How do you feel about, from a point guard perspective? And we'll get into some of the talk about what we're hearing from quotes wise in the post-game press conference. But what are you hearing, or what are you thinking in terms of the point guard position? Because that's a big piece. Like, that is essentially the quarterback in basketball. They still don't have that, but they're playing better. We haven't seen Foster Loyer. Appreciate my cousin Keith for showing some love. I got to make sure that I give him some credit, because this is a team that we've not seen Foster Loyer for 3 games, and they, ironically and coincidentally enough, happen to be on a winning streak without him in the lineup. I think I may have said that once or twice, that might be the better idea. What is your take on how Michigan State has performed, and they still have the point guard situation?
Yeah, very good. This lineup they went on with last night was really good. Seeing Gabe Brown inserted into the lineup, I think, is very important. There's a theory I've been promoting called the Gabe Effect, that his mere presence on the floor changes the dynamic, because he's going to crash the boards. He's going to be out there. Mm-hmm. And let's be honest, man, when you lose a All-American player, one of the best players in the country, in Cassius Winston, that's a boy you really can't, just plug and play with another player. And I think, unfortunately for Foster Loyer, who's one of your favorite players, I know, he was in a situation, man, where he's probably in a better situation now being a coach. And it sounds bad, but, Tom Izzo is going on and on about him literally being on the bench right now with play cards and doing that because he has a shoulder injury. So he's probably able to give his influence. I want to go back to something else you mentioned about the Blue Bloods. I appreciate you resurrecting that terminology. And I got to admit, you've kind of brought it to this generation, because a lot of people may not be familiar with the Blue Bloods. And to talk about that is very important. But I think one other factor may play into the Blue Bloods challenges that they've been having, probably with the exception of Kansas with their record. No fans. At the beginning of the season, Tom Izzo was very adamant and concerned about no fans, and I think we in the media kind of blew that off, no big deal. But look at Cameron Indoor Arena. Look at the Izzone. These are sold out locations all the time. The question was posed to Gabe Brown last night. What do you think it would have been like had there been fans in there? And he like to fell out of his chair. And I think that's a good point, that teams like this that have sellouts all the time rely on that fan factor. And when you don't have that, you have to manufacture your excitement. You have to manufacture your energy. And I think along with the COVID layoffs and all those things, it took a while for Michigan State to be able to manufacture their own mojo, if you will. But going back to your original question about the point guard situation, I think it just took a while, man. They've been point guard by committee, but this latest lineup you've seen is probably going to be the lineup they're going to go with. And then who knows, man, maybe he has to show the people what doesn't work to give him cover to do what he wants to do. Now, you may say that's Michigan State, that's Tom Izzo, he's a Hall of Fame coach. He don't got to show nothing to nobody. But then again, there are, I think, external factors out there, whether it's the media, whether it's stakeholders that say, hey, I tried this, it's not working, we're going to go that way. And I think you get the outcome that we saw, which was just a moment ago.
Lindsay Huddleston, former founder of Sports Psychology Solutions, better known
I'm
as
like, what I quit?
SPS.
What I quit?
No, it's all good, my brother.
All
Just
are good.
a tad slip up. Sports
Fine.
Psychology Solutions. Y'all make sure y'all go and give this dude a follow on social media because not only is he getting it, you know what? Let me do this, and I probably should do this at the beginning of the show, but for those of you who don't, for those that may not be familiar with Sports Psychology Solutions and what it brings to the table and how it correlates or connects with sports in general from a psychology standpoint, explain to them what that is all about so that the people can have
Thank you.
an idea.
I appreciate it. Now, SBS Sports Psychology Solutions was founded several years ago. My original, connection to the sport, not only being a coach and a former high school player and whatnot, was a sports psychology consultant. Coming to the game from a mental toughness standpoint. I want to shout out Desmond Ferguson, one of Lansing's finest in the Moneyball tournament he would always have. And instead of me sitting in the good seats, I would find the cheap seats right there on the floor, which ended up allowing me to endear myself to a lot of Michigan State players. And eventually got to the point where I was sitting at, along with some of my other partners, was like the spot because all the players came and congregated. And the reason I wanted to be there, Deshaun, is because I would probably have been in a practice with the players earlier that day with all the coaching staff. But then at the Moneyball, these guys were free to do their thing. I'll tell you a quick story that kind of summarizes it. When Jaren Jackson was here at Michigan State, his one-and-done year, I was in a practice one day. At the time, Monty Williams was probably on the staff of the San Antonio Spurs. He was there doing some scouting, and I had a relationship, very brief because of my relationship with USA Basketball. So we're in there, and that could be any given time in the Breslin Center. You can have GMs, you have scouts in there. And the concern for Jaren, and Jaren knew this was a concern, is that he had bad body language. Whenever he got challenged or anything like that, he would shrink, and it just wasn't a good look. He, being the son of an NBA player, told him, hey, this might hurt you. This can hurt your draft stock. So he was very conscious of it. And Tom Izzo and I would talk about that all the time, players and their body language. So when I was at Moneyball, no coaches around, just the players and the fans, where I was sitting at, he came up to me, Janet, and said, Lindsay, I need you to keep sitting there. Because when I see you, I'm reminded of what I need to do. So right there alone, it just really touched me that my mere presence can have an impact on someone's, mental toughness, if you will. And then along came an opportunity, man, for me to get press credentials. And, me being from a brother from Detroit, I'm a hustler, man. The opportunity presented itself. I said, what we're going to do. So I was able to merge this opportunity, Deshaun, to be able to stay focused on that. And as you know, in the press conferences, which you're in many of them as well, all my questions are focused on mental toughness. All my questions are based on this ongoing thing Tom Izzo and I have about how do you better coach this generation of athletes. And we actually had a eureka moment last night when Josh Langford went Wakanda on AJ Hogarth and got up in him. But AJ later came back and said he took it better coming from his peer than he would his coach. And I think that's the major thing that we're going to talk about. But I appreciate you letting me be able to talk about how SBS got to where it is. And I'm really happy with what's happening. And then to be able to have platforms to be on like yours, which is an amazing platform, is also just adding to the luxury and allure of what we have going on.
No, thank you much for the kind words and the kind gesture and the accolades and all that good stuff for the compliment, man. You might have oversold it a little bit, but nonetheless, I want to make sure that I let the people know, as you can see it scrolling around there on the bottom, because we do stream live on Facebook as well as on Periscope, in addition to YouTube and Twitch. Feel free to chime in a little bit if you have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, opinions, and so forth. You just kind of talking about that mindset and just the strength of the mind and just all of the above, listening to Aaron Henry, who I definitely will raise my hand first to say I was the person, maybe not that first said it, but that definitely said it and said, this guy is not a number one option on a team. At very, very best, and this is being probably generous, that he's the second option on a team that has a status or the ilk of a Michigan State type of program. But he's been bringing it, dude. And I know a lot of people have said that is essentially the X factor. I'm not sure who the X factor is on this team, if I'm just being honest. Is that Joshua Langford, maybe the guy that I feel the worst about, or the worst for going into this 3-game stretch that they're just coming off of winning now, just because he sacrificed so much just to get back on the floor and came really close to just throwing in the towel and tapping out. But glad that it's turning around for the sake of his career to be able to finish strong. But going back to some of the post-game comments that we heard, listen to a guy like Aaron Henry, who we were just talking about, saying he's got.
No volume right now.
Okay, you hear me now?
Back. You're
All
back.
right,
Yeah.
perfect. Yep, had to get rid of that phone call. But saying that, you know what, I've gotten away from overthinking. Also mentioning that they really wanted as a team to kind of emulate Ohio State's togetherness, because that's one thing that I noticed, that in the event Michigan State came away with unfortunately adding a number to the right side of the result column. Much of it was going to be because the togetherness that Ohio State played with, and that's something that I think helped Michigan State, obviously, and making sure that the big man in the middle, the freshman Key, was not a determining factor. One thing that a quote, and I know everybody's going to talk about the quote that Aaron Henry put out there about fishes keep swimming. Nobody gives, credit or accolades to fish for swimming. Nobody should give credit to, well, that's what we do here. We win. We win at this program. So just mentioning, talking about his finger jam injury, he said that's not stopping nothing. I'll play with one game. That's a test. I mean, I'll play with one finger. That's a testament to Aaron Henry, and obviously that's kind of trickled down from Tom Izzo. Just to have that toughness, something that we have not seen. How big of a factor has the toughness that you've seen from them, whether it be before the Indiana and Illinois game, or even during those games? What I didn't see was the toughness. I didn't see that Spartan pride that they play with, that getting on the ground after loose balls, creating second chance points, cleaning the glass, all those things that Tom Izzo built and established this program on. Uh, Speak a little bit about the physicality difference that you've been able to see within this team, if you've seen it at all.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I remember early in the season, I was watching the game, and it's not so much what you see as what you don't see. And I remember seeing that they were struggling. I'm like, man, why somebody not checking out on one of the teammates? Where's the aggression? So I posed that question to Tom, and I used the term, alpha male. I said, do you have an alpha male? And Tom smiled and said, the alpha dog. The alpha dog. He said, no, Lindsay, we don't just make those. You got to have that already. And he referenced, of course, Mateen Cleaves, and he referenced some other players going forward, the Draymond Greens and whatnot. And he said, these guys are good guys, but that is just not their personality. And I think what's happening now, it's been by committee, and it's come from some unlikely places. Like, again, I talk about Josh Langford last night, and Tom got excited, and he described it as Josh being passionate and how he responded to his teammate. And this is a man of God. And I'm not saying none of us are, but he's like literally on his way to probably, if not seminary school, or he'll be preaching any Sunday. And I say that with all respect to say that even someone who's known for being so low key and so kind of, it was just unexpected, but he had that fire in him. So I think what we're seeing, man, is typical of March Madness when it relates to Tom Izzo's team. They come on a little later. They give you some kind of, a stomach ulcer about mid-season, because they're dropping games. But Tom Izzo is always kind of tinkering and figuring it out. And I think even with COVID, right now is the time. This is the time when his team started to come together and they peak. And I think what's happening is that connectedness that they've been talking about, being connected. That's like their war cry the past 3 games. I think that is allowing them to be strong in numbers. They say, what's stronger, the finger or the fist? And they're coming together like that, and with this momentum they have, man, I don't see them turning around and turning back. And as Aaron Henry said, I posed a question after the Indiana game. I was quoting one of Nipsey Hussle albums. I said, a great urban poet once said, you'll stop losing when you fed up. And he ran with that, man. He said, yeah, man, I was just fed up. And the last thing I also want to add to that mental toughness is not so much what we've seen in these last 3 games. It's the resolve they've had, Deshaun, in the losing streak, losing to Purdue twice. You know, those type of games where he had to come in front of us again and address things. I mean, I think that is where his mental toughness got strengthened, and you end up seeing the outcomes. He said he doesn't want to have that feeling again.
Yeah, it's just crazy to think that this is the same team that not that long ago was just losing by 30 points to Iowa or losing by 30 points. I think maybe
Minnesota,
Northwestern was in that
yeah, Minnesota got at him
conversation.
too.
Minnesota got at them really good. I feel like there was somebody else, but Rutgers was another one that got them by 30. So you see a 30 piece, 30 piece, 30 piece over and over. But as we get closer to March, that tends to kind of go away and disappear. And I definitely want to throw out there a couple more of the quotes from last night in the post-game press conference, specifically from Tom Izzo, who has not only mentioned that Ohio State is still a 1 seed in his mind, but much like what you were talking about Joshua Langford, saying that he's kind of given us everything in his body, and just I don't know exactly the allotted amount of minutes that he was expected to play. I kind of feel like he's gone beyond that, and that just gives him a little bit more credit because he's fought, tooth and nail. And like you said, the word has been connection. I've heard that word from everybody that approached the podium during the post-game press conference yesterday. But I want to talk about one player, and I know that you mentioned him a couple times, and that's Gabe Brown. Uh, I'm not sure if I necessarily call him my X factor because I think that they have multiple Joey Hausers in that conversation as well, along with a few others. But Gabe Brown, I think, is the best player. I've been saying he's the best basketball player on this team. And if you can remember Chris Allen from a few years ago,
Yep.
he kind of reminds me a little bit of a situation of Chris Allen similarly because he was brought in to be this prolific jump shooter and specific, like a dead-eye specialist to an extent, but had a little bit more athleticism than I think he was given the opportunity to showcase. In some cases, we see that from Gabe Brown, and not all the time. But in talking about Gabe Brown yesterday, just said finally Gabe Brown is kind of rebounding a little bit more the way that we expected and kind of need him to, playing a little bit better, talking about that's his Morris Peterson and that he's happy that Gabe Brown is getting what he deserved. Do you think that Morris Peterson is comparison, I guess, is kind of spot on for the role that they play in the whole nine because it sounds pretty much just about right. I mean, there's multiple guys. Like I even feel like in some cases that Julius Marble kind of reminds me of like Andre Hudson. I feel like he probably wears the same number that Andre Hudson had too. But
Maybe.
talk about Gabe Brown a little bit and how much of a key do you think he is for Michigan State's success going forward?
Yeah, I mean, Gabe Brown, man, I can't say enough about him. And if he wanted to be referenced, that's a great reference, Mo Pete, because Mo Pete came on by his 4th year. And at one point in time would also say that Aaron Henry, he would make that comparison saying, listen, these guys weren't highly recruited guys. They didn't come in with the expectation to be like one and done. They had to take time to develop. And I think Gabe Brown would love that reference because Mo Pete went on to make some paper when he went to the NBA, had a very extended career for being a sharpshooter and whatnot. But there's also another piece going on, man. If you do go to my Twitter, since you referenced A Solutions 1, you'll see, man, Gabe has a cult following. And I coined the term. I don't like to kind of put out that I said it, but I call it the get up shot screw. So every time after a game, win or lose, because we were in the catbird seat, we can just look down and see that I would record him coming back in and get up shots. And then a few other players would kind of come in. And you start seeing a few people following on Twitter. But last night, I'm at about 150 likes just on that alone and about 30 retweets, which is a huge step up, if you will, from the twos and fews that were going on. Because what's happening is he's inspiring people. I didn't want to say it in the press conference. I don't want people to take it the wrong way. But it's that Forrest Gump effect, Deshaun. When Forrest started running, this all due respect, when Forrest was running in the movie and everybody just started following him and he was like leading all these people. And I think between the electricity and the win last night, on top of just seeing him coming back, it's something about America, man, how we love a grindy, gritty type story. You know what I'm saying? We love somebody who get it out the mud. We love somebody who just go. And Gabe is so great when he talks about it. If I said, Gabe, man, what do you say to these people? He said, man, I had to work. He said, I had to work to get here. Yeah. So I still got to work now. And then the other comment was, I said, well, that's such an easy word. Why don't so many people do it? And he quoted Tom Mills and said, you either like it, love it, or live it. And it gave me goosebumps, man, because just like Tate's Tate, and you and I have a personal relationship. Let's talk about from whence you came. And it was just your grind that did it. That's why when I'm able to be on your platform and share, when I see the names I can name, I got one of your guests I got a little beef with. We'll probably talk about that before we wrap up. But when you get these nationally recognized college, hoops insiders coming on your show, some fawning over you, you've earned it. And that's a great story of inspiration because we can tap into that. People can relate, whether you're a basketball player or not. So you look at Gabe Brown, who lost his father. He wears his emotions on his sleeve. He had kind of been in Tom's doghouse, if you will, which is kind of a good thing. Because in this doghouse, you come out with a gold-plated collar, and you go on to make a lot of bread, right?
Aaron Henry's been there before too, in the tournament a couple of years ago,
And when you weather the storm, it happens. So I think what happened is that Gabe effect I'm talking about is not just on the court for his teammates. It's for just anyone who's a fan, man, who sees that, wow, man, he's putting in that work. And we all know, Deshaun, that putting in that work is what pushes you over the top. But it's not sexy. Right. It's not always recognized. And it's only because me being me was able to be at the games and put that out there every time that people were able to see that. So Gabe Brown, man, I think is a pro's pro. I think that he's going to have a long-term career after next season. Short of them winning the national championship, if something happens and he got to go, if he has one more season back here at Michigan State under the tutelage of Tom Izzo, he's probably going to get into the NBA, but find himself having a long-term career there and doing really well for himself.
There's nothing like having those players, man, on your roster that, like you said, I guess that's what the cool kids. You've been hanging around some cool kids because you saying these terms and analogies of getting it out the mud and all of that. But no, I'm spot on with you on that because it definitely does take the work. Anybody can talk about it and this and that, but we're going to, much like when we talk about, different podcasts and platforms and outlets and, we've all kind of been having a quarantine in our homes and this and that, but we're going to find out when the COVID lifts, who's been putting the work in and who was just talking about putting in the work, so who's been taking the elevator and the escalator up and who's been taking the stairs. So that's definitely kind of alluding to what you're talking about with Gabe Brown and actually him mentioning yesterday, talking about, I believe in this team. No, it's not nothing I expected for him to say differently than that, but just the context and the tone of him saying it last night really led me to believe he really means that. Like he really, really believes in that. And I believe he's come a long way from a maturation standpoint. Because you've seen some of his antics, and I'm not like the old man get off my lawn dude or anything like that, but you've seen the antics on the bench a couple of years ago, and then now you see, not that the kids can't have fun, because I'm all about that, right? But it's about business now, and he's taking the game serious, and his approach appears to be a little bit different. So that's just a testament to his mindset a little bit. And also mentioning that what's been different for this team is that everybody's been putting more time in. That's time in the gym. That's going into coach's office to pick his brain, ask questions,
Ooh, you take
like
your
all
notes,
these different things.
You good on your notes, aren't you?
My brother, you will be amazed. Hey,
you're right.
Listen, let me tell you something. What is the point of having a notebook? It ain't got no scratches and it ain't got no this and that in it. Like it's almost like me, and I'm not trying to get, obviously too religious, but it's just like the Bible, carrying around that bringing that Bible to church, and it's just in perfect condition, in perfect shape. My grandma's Bible had all types of marks and scratches and all kinds of bent up pages and the whole night. That's when you know that you're using that word. And so I use my notebook. I like to bring it to every single time that I get a chance to go and check out a game, because I like to think that I see the game, even though we see the same game, we're watching it with different eyes, right? And I also wanted to get into some of the conversation or what Tom Izzo talked about in his post-game presser as well, saying that we're not safe yet, so it's obviously not like they're a lock for the NCAA tournament. But in addition to that, that they one thing that they have accomplished is that they've accomplished getting up off the mat. And I think that was my biggest thing. If a team is just better than you from top to bottom, I'm okay with that. The bench, or maybe being outcoached, or the starting five, or better shooters, or better wings, or defense, or whatever the case may be. But one thing that's kind of hard, a pill that's hard to accept, is the effort, going the extra mile, and a lot of those type of things. So I think it is definitely a good thing that we're starting to see that spark and pride. I'm okay if teams are better than you, but to outwork you, that's not something that Michigan State has really been used to, and that's something that we saw a lot this year. Hence why the record has looked the way that it has before the last 3 games. But even mentioning, that we're not about winning games, we're about winning championships, and that's that mentality of
Everybody trying to get at you right now. What you doing, man? You doing your show right now?
Yeah, it's blowing up, man. It's the hotline. It's the hotline. But everybody trying to get in on the Michigan State conversation, bro. But let me tell you something. The ship has sailed. If you haven't, and that was the thing that I want you to talk about that as far as the fan base too.
Sure.
Because I believe that when you're talking about psychology, that's in the minds of all people. That's fan base. We're all fans in a roundabout way to an extent. Obviously, we got jobs to do and so forth. But I was under the impression in a roundabout way of feeling like a lot of people really felt like this season was maybe not a wash, maybe wasn't going to look the way that it did this year, but that they would at least be decent or above average, but not nothing great. And everybody would be looking forward to what next year and the year after would look like because of the recruiting classes. Then they get out to a great start. They rank top 5 in the country. They beat Duke, something that they don't do very often. And then here comes the landslide, and people start giving up. Now, Mateen Cleaves went on social media and kind of talked about, hey, we don't tuck our tails, we don't run and hide, we stand and fight. That's what Spartans do. So if you're not one of those real, authentic, organic Michigan State fans, then move out of the way because we don't. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but the real Spartans, it's time to step up, and that's something that this team has done. The expectations are realistic or unrealistic expectations for what you've seen from a lot of Spartan fans so far has been what? Because I'm kind of curious to how different people view the fan base sometimes.
Honestly, man, I got to give credit from my visual and my vantage point, especially when I'm posting at the games and I'm being introduced to people I don't know, but only through their connection to Michigan State. I think they've been pretty good in comparison to last year. I think in past years, they're more critical of the team. And I just think that the COVID scenario and the uncertainty that COVID has brought, not just with sports, but in non-sports world, it kind of put them at a real tepid response. So I haven't had this off with your head type, feedback from Spartan fans. I think Spartan fans have been saying, man, it's a really, really tough time. But, man, it'll be hard to go find somebody who said, oh, I knew this was going to happen, that, at this point in the season with 6 games left, that they'll be on the 3-game win streak. I think it would have been hard to find anyone to say that. And I was part of the contingency of people. And it's not that I got encouraged to do it, but I kind of just came out of myself and said, Tom, are you fighting not just for wins, but, for, the culture and the brand? Because unknowingly for a lot of people, after I want to say the second Purdue loss, right around that time, they lost a big recruit, the Canadian kid, Abakio, I want to say. He decommitted. And that wasn't really big news, but I know he knew that. So was that because Michigan State is not looking like Michigan State, which was my reason for talking about the culture? And one of your, guys who've come on before, Dan Dockich, took it and ran with that. It came on during the ESPN game, and he played the question that I posed, without any kind of recognition, which I know is a pet peeve for you out here in this world. But anyway, he just says, no, it's not about a brand. And I just disagree with that. I think basketball programs are branded. And I just think that he took a liberty saying that it wasn't about a brand. And I don't know if he wanted to have some extended talking points, but hey, it is what it is. But how have fans been? I think fans have been pretty good considering. I think they've been pretty forgiving considering that it's been COVID. And now, man, with the shot in the arm, they've got, these past 3 games. I think no matter what the outcome is, fans are going to be more appreciative of Tom Izzo, Michigan State, and what this team has done this season.
I want to get ready to wrap, but I do want to ask you this because we do something that's called our chalkboard question of the day. And because I'm an old man, if you can't tell by my hairstyle, because I'm an old man, I still believe in the chalkboard method. I ain't really quite adjusted to the dry erase marker and the dry
Oh yeah.
erase board yet. So I want to go, yeah, I want to go old school and do chalkboard with chalk. Okay, if you had to give me one word to describe what you believe, obviously coming up this weekend is going to be on the road at Maryland. They get a home game at Indiana, and then following that up is back-to-back home games to conclude the season. I'm sorry, back-to-back games against the rivals in the Michigan Wolverines, who's currently ranked number 3 right now, to finish the season. What is the one word that you would give as to the word of whether it be advice or the word that you would give to describe what Michigan State needs to either capitalize on, work on, stay away from, whatever the case may be, so that they can finish strong over the course of these next 4 games? What would that one word
Very
be?
good. I'll go 1.5 word, present. And if we add B on there, you got to stay present because the concern is, and I think, man, you talked about this, that this Maryland game could be a trap game. That they're so looking forward to going in and seeing top-ranked Michigan that they lose their focus. Right now, the team is not practicing; they're just playing, which is every college basketball player's dream, just to play.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in a great spot. And if they stay present in the moment, they
Mm-hmm.
can continue that. But that's difficult because you got to put the blinders on. You can't start looking too far beyond. But if they stay present in the moment, right now, they can get through the Maryland game. Then they can find themselves getting in next week, getting themselves ready for Michigan. And if you stay present, in other words, don't look down at your feet. Yeah, you walking on water right now, but don't ruin it by looking down. But, if you stay present in the moment, stay focused and stay locked in, you'll be okay. And I think Tom Izzo and this great staff, got to give credit to the staff, has the ability to do that because, as he said last night too, he's also just kind of getting them ready for March Madness a little bit earlier. And that's what you do. Those quick turnarounds, stay locked in. But if they stay present, I think they'll be able to have more success.
Does NCAA does Michigan State make the NCAA tournament?
Yes, that's
They
big
do.
business, baby. In my view, some may argue. I think they made it already. I think these 3 games allow someone to make a case. And then, as you saw today, the NCAA is giving a 48-hour turnaround for substitute teams.
Mm-hmm.
So watch out. Who cares how you get there? If somebody goes down and Michigan State is right there and they get in, it doesn't matter. But I think at the end of the day, Michigan State is going to split that, at least split. If not, who knows? A double upset with Michigan. But they're going to make a showing. That committee is going to get them in there because they've earned it, considering COVID. And they'll be playing for their 23rd season in the NCAA.
Ironically enough, Michigan State, one of only 15 teams that has a handful of quad 1 wins or more. Last question for you, real quick, Linz. Over the course of these last 4 games, and I'm going to give them to you again because I want to find out how you believe that they'll finish the regular season with the record. That is on the road at Maryland, a home game against Indiana, followed up by an away game in Ann Arbor, and then a home game against Michigan State. What is your prediction or your projection for these last 4 games in terms of how they will finish?
Let me give you 2 wins. Just 2 wins jumps out to me. Let's say they stay locked in and beat Maryland. Let's just say randomly Indiana wants some get back. You know what I'm saying? Let's say that ability to stay locked in mentally for Maryland to carry over for Indiana was just too much because they're thinking about Michigan. Indiana's able to
Mm-hmm.
slide in, and then you get the Michigan piece going on where they may go down to Ann Arbor and win. They may go down. You like that, huh?
Linz, you must
You
have
got a
been
lot of
taking,
notes. I was looking at your
bro.
notebook, man.
I was about to say you might have been taking a little peek at the answer key when I wasn't paying attention.
You highlight. That yellow highlighter you use makes it easier to read. But that's just the feeling I got because you know what? It's always the anomaly, Deshaun. It's always what you're not thinking. And I think, as a sports psychology consultant, I kind of like to try to think about what they're not thinking about and what other factors may go. So let's say they do that. They punch them in the mouth down in Ann Arbor, which Michigan wouldn't expect. And you come back to have a tight one at home. And who cares? They go 2-2 for these last 4 games. The committee says, yeah, man, COVID season, give it to them, you know, because they know that Michigan State fans are going to travel. They know that Michigan State is going to be able to make a good run. Come on, man. They're trying to get that, $300 million back that they dropped. You know what I'm saying? I need that back. You know what I'm saying? It's Mark Emmert, like, hey, I need my bread back. But no, man, I just think that it's one thing to play strong like you did, but it's also about having the mental capacity to stay locked in. That just takes a lot of energy out. You know, it's kind of like when you see Baby Yoda and he has his finger up. He can only do it for so long, and then he falls out. That was a crazy reference to The Mandalorian, but hey, man, I'm on Tate's Take. You know, right now, we get it in, baby.
Mark Emmert might want to, if he want that 300 million back, he might want to make a phone call to Matt Ishbia. Lindsay Huddleston, man, from Lindsay Huddleston, founder of Sports Psychology Solutions, better known as SPS. Give the dude a follow, man. You want to know who asked the best questions during the press conferences, keeping up with Michigan State and so forth. Definitely make sure you give him a follow first and foremost on Twitter at HSolutions1. That is at HSolutions1. And also on IG at SPS Edge. He posts a ton of just different things from the press conference and just all over the place, different games, covering games and so forth. And just always in the place to be, especially around mid-Michigan area. Lindsay Huddleston, founder of Sports Psychology Solutions. I appreciate you, my brother.
Appreciate you more. Thank you, bro.
No doubt, of course, and that's my dude, Linz, man, and you never know who you're gonna get here on this program, you know. So, and I think Linz just kind of spoke on that, and I know next week we're gonna have some different guests as well, and leading up to the NCAA tournament and get some NBA, see if we can sneak some NBA stuff in there as well, to kind of top everything off. So definitely want to give him a huge thank you for jumping on with me and using this episode 62 of Tate's Take, what I like to call the best, the most entertaining, the most informational, and the most educational basketball content on the planet in the form of a podcast. So I want to show Lindsay some love for stopping on by, and make sure that you go and subscribe anywhere that you find your favorite podcast: iTunes, Google Podcasts, Red Circle, Spotify, Stitcher, the whole nine. And in addition to that, make sure that you subscribe to that. As I always say, per usual, tell your mama, tell your grandmama, tell your baby mama, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell everybody where they can find that. At Tate's Take Hoops on the Twitter, TATESTAKEHOOPS. Appreciate everybody for jumping in with me and showing some love for our Victory for MSU segment. Let's see how they do with the next game coming up this weekend on the road at Maryland. Appreciate everybody for showing some love and for subscribing in the future. So I really do appreciate it and looking forward to talking to you soon. That's it. Signing off episode 62 of Tate's Take, hashtag where basketball lives.